Hello and welcome to the Burn KC ScorchCast. I am your host, Alex Blackburn, here to bring you the good KC sports news and the bad, and sometimes the ugly and goofy and just the Kansas City sports news in general. We got kind of a short show here this Monday evening. Apologies for not getting one out last night. I had a ton of homework I had to do. I just finished up a very large paper for grad school, so I couldn't get a ScorchCast going. I got the notes here for it, though. I also got a little bit of preparation time in for it, so hopefully it will be a short but sweet one. And got a few things to talk about. Got Kansas taking a bad loss against Texas. Got Missouri still staying undefeated, but can it last? We'll answer that question. Got some Royals finale news. Not a ton there, just kind of going over Zach Greinke and then what's next for the Royals. Got plenty of Chiefs news. Last night's game was interesting, to say the least. And then got a bunch of minor news stuff that I really don't want to necessarily put in a segment. Doesn't necessarily. Well, some of the stuff deserves a segment on its own, but I can just talk about it pretty quickly in a 30-second to a minute little spiel. That's the cat's feeder going off. I apologize. I forgot that it's close to 6:30. But anyway, got some Blues stuff go over in that minor news segment, sporting, and some KU basketball news. So strap in, sit tight, enjoy the show. All right, so let's get into some college football news first. I feel like I begin with college football every ScorchCast. Leave a comment if you think that I don't, but I feel like I do. Basically every single one, or just college sports in general, because I used to begin it with college basketball. But I digress. If you guys don't mind it, I don't. But some college football news. University of Kansas, the Jayhawks, got throttled by Texas in the late game. They did have 3 quarters of pretty good football. The defense held strong, even though it was 40-14. They did. If you actually watched the game, Kansas State fans, you recognize that KU actually did hold their own pretty well. And a big reason for why that loss was so significant in terms of margin of score is Jalen Daniels wasn't out there. And I know that he's not the end all be all, and they probably still would have lost even with him in there, and da 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 da. Potentially. But what we had with Jalen Daniels has perplexed and terrified KU fans. Because it turns out that back tightness that he's been having maybe something more. I don't want to say or speculate anything super serious, because I personally don't know. The only people that know are Jalen Daniels himself and some people in the Anderson family football complex. They're saying he's day-to-day as of right now. But with back issues, you can't be playing around with those, which is understandable. I mean, I have back issues myself, but I manage, and I'm sure that them keeping Jalen Daniels out of arguably the biggest game of the season so far, it says something. It says that there's something going on here. Now, a lot of people have speculated, oh, he's sitting out to transfer. He's pulling a Khalil Herbert. He's doing this. He's doing that. No, he's not. That's already been confirmed that he isn't. It's already been specified by a ton of KU people that that's simply just not the case. This is an issue, though, but it's an issue of Jalen Daniels' health, not his morale. It could turn into an issue of morale if people continue to harass him and say that he's soft for sitting out this game. He's not. I mean, again, you can't play with back issues. I mean, back issues are what they are, and if the athletic training staff says no, sorry, my eye just, um, but if the athletic training staff says no, then it's a no. Plain and simple. And the only problem that I personally, as a KU alum and fan myself, have with this situation is the fact that KU just really hasn't been all that transparent with it. Obviously, these back issues have been bothering Jalen since week one. He didn't start versus Missouri State, and I mean, just it's been an ongoing issue that I feel like KU needs to be more transparent with. And the less transparent they are with it, the more fans are gonna be doomsayers or gonna be nihilists because that's what KU football fans have been kind of conditioned to be like. Is oh we can't have anything nice, oh we suck again, that kind of mentality. Um, and that's not gonna go away until you are fully transparent, until there's an understanding between the fans and the program of hey, we are out here to win, we are out here to be contenders for the Big 12, we're out here to play good football for you guys because that's what you guys deserve. But the fans need to show that they deserve it as well. No more leaving at halftime. I don't care how much the Hawk is calling your name. First and foremost, grow up. Secondly, I would much rather watch football than go to the Hawk. If you know about the Hawk, then you know. Um, eh, and and I completely see where Travis Goff is coming from with that strongly worded letter regarding the fan base and how people need to stop leaving at halftime. People need to sell out games because it's what keeps Lance Leipold here. It's what keeps guys like Jalen Daniels here. It's what keeps recruits coming in. I mean, Michael Boganowski, the number one recruit in the state of Kansas, and I think he's like the 13th ranked linebacker in the nation, something like that, was at the KU BYU game. And people left at halftime for that game. It was a close game, too. And that looks terrible. And I see a bunch of KU people coming after, guys like Bryson Stricker, guys like Mike Vernon, and other people that are voicing, hey, like, get out to football games. That's the only way that this team stays good and this team continues to prosper. You guys got to get out and go to these games. And I see a bunch of people that are just like, oh, well, we went during, the Beatty era. We went during the Charlie Weiss, Turner Gill era, back when I was paying tuition, blah, 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 excuse, excuse, excuse. It's a new era. Get over your nihilism and go out and support this team. Because now more than ever, this team needs your support. Because they are just finding their stride as a good program. And the reason why programs like Northwestern and Vanderbilt and all these other Power 5 teams that look terrible, The reason why they stay in the dumps is because they don't have fan support. Just plain and simple, they don't. And, you can point to, well, then why does UCLA have such a solid program, and why does USC have a solid program, even though they're only selling out half the stadium? It's because they're trying to take the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl's pardon me. The Rose Bowl's a big stadium. It holds a lot of people. That's why it looks like kind of a weak crowd. Don't whataboutism this. Understand that this is a new era of KU football where KU football is legitimately good with a legitimately good head football coach and staff. And go support that. It's not, oh, we just got to wait for basketball season now. It's not that anymore. Get off your high horse and go watch these games. Because there's a lot of people that would love to watch these games that can't right now. And when you season ticket holders sit on your butts at home and don't go, that's what causes this disconnect. That's what causes Travis Goff to say, hey, where is everybody? That's what causes the AD to call you guys out. Don't act all offended when it's the truth. Again, get over yourself. Yeah, the loss to Texas was bad. I agree. It wasn't great. It wasn't a great game, but Jason Bean went in there and got thrown into the fire. And yeah, that is a mistake on KU's part. It's because of the lack of transparency and the lack of preparation. Because they didn't realize Jalen Daniels was going to be out until like an hour before game time. That's how fluid these back injuries are. You have to understand that this is a situation that KU football kind of has their hands tied in. And you know what? Jason Bean's going to be taking reps with the ones all week this week and should be fully prepared to take on Central Florida that may or may not have John Reese Plumlee. Whether or not they have John Reese Plumlee, I think Jason Bean's going to be just fine. He's a great quarterback. He just needs some confidence. You know how he gets that confidence? By selling out the booth. So go do it. And recognize that you need to quit being a snob. That's just my opinion as a KU alum and fan. Frankly speaking, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that there are people coming after guys like Bryson Stricker and Mike Vernon, the coaching staff. It's what's going to drive Lance Leipold to Michigan State. It is. It is what is going to drive Lance Leipold to Michigan State. It's what's going to drive Jalen Daniels out of this program. Is when you screw around like this and pretend you're some holier than thou person. What have you done to help the program? Wow, you went to games during the Weiss era when we had an athletic director that didn't give a damn about the program. You think Shion Zanger is the equivalent to Travis Goff? You think Charlie Weiss is the equivalent to Lance Leipold? Because that's basically what you're saying. Is that you're basically saying, oh, this team still sucks. This team still doesn't meet my standards for me to get out to the game. I'm going to I'm going to turn my nose up at this team because they had one bad loss. And they're dealing with something that's completely unpredictable. Get over yourself. Moving on to Missouri. Sorry about that. Uh, Forgive me for anybody that is a true KU fan and is going out to these games and is putting hard-earned money, hard-earned, effort towards building this program with this team. Guys that go to games, people that show up for this team. You guys rock. You're awesome. That was not directed at you. But moving on to Missouri. Missouri's still undefeated. Missouri had a good win against Vanderbilt. They handled them pretty well. I honestly was a little bit concerned in regard to the the recent scores that Missouri had. They had a couple close calls against some pretty not great Group of Five teams. But they handled Vanderbilt well. Brady Cook looked as advertised. I mean, and the wide receivers looked great too. Um, they're not missing Dominic Lovett. I'll tell you that right now. I've been all over Missouri Twitter, and it's just constant cooking of Dominic Lovett. If you don't know that story, Dominic Lovett, former Missouri wide receiver, transferred to Georgia because of some issues that he had with sharing the ball with Luther Burden, I think. And he's moved to Georgia and is like their fifth string wide receiver now, fifth or sixth. It hasn't looked great for him. But it's looked really good for guys like Theo Weiss and Luther Burden. So all's well that ends well, I suppose. Missouri though needs to give me just a second. Yeah, Missouri. I'm I'm still not convinced. I mean, it's Vanderbilt, and yeah, you had Missouri had a good win against Kansas State, which is a very good team. Um, so I understand the hype. I don't think they beat LSU. I'll just come out and say it. I don't think they beat LSU. I think they're going to go into that game overly confident. I think Brady Cook is going to struggle against a secondary that's much better than Kansas State's secondary. And I think they lose. And it doesn't get any easier from that, honestly, because after that, you've got another ranked team in Kentucky. I think they pull it off against Kentucky. Kentucky's another team where I'm just like, I'm not fully convinced. Missouri's got a great front seven that's going to go up against a kind of O-line for Kentucky. And I think they'll dominate. So it'll still be a closer game, but I think they come away with that win there. In Lexington, again, it'll be close, but if Brady Cook is as advertised, like we've been seeing him, that shouldn't be a problem for him. And then you get to South Carolina. I think they beat South Carolina. I don't think South Carolina stand a chance there. But then you get to Georgia, and it's in Athens. That is going to be an incredibly tough game for Missouri. And I think that that's going to be much like how Kansas had Texas this past weekend. I think that's going to be their Texas. I think that's going to be a wake up call, and I think that's going to be a reality check of, hey, you're doing great, and this is a good program, and Eli Drinkwitz is probably going to keep his job, but you got a long way to go before you can play with the big boys. And then Tennessee, Florida, and Arkansas after that. So we're getting into the meat and potatoes of these college football schedules, and we're going to see a lot of teams fluctuate, I feel like. And we're going to find out which teams are really about it and which teams aren't. I don't think KU is fully out of it as of yet, but that loss to Texas, especially by how much it was, hurt. There were still some bright spots in that game, but that loss to Texas hurts. If Missouri cannot come away with the win over LSU, I think that says a lot about where their program is at. If they can't come away with the win versus LSU or Kentucky, that says even more. And they're going to get stomped by Georgia if that's the case. I expected the game against Georgia to be closer than KU's game against Texas. I do. Do I think it's still a 2-possession plus spread? Absolutely. But that's in the future, so we'll talk about that later. But for now, that's just kind of where I see these two teams. Kansas State had a bye week. They play Oklahoma State this coming weekend. I think they'll walk all over them. I think Kansas State easily finds themselves back into the rankings. Either this week or next week. I don't think they stay out for very long. I'm surprised they're even out now. But, that's just the way the donkey dances sometimes. So, okay. Moving on to the Royals. Zach Greinke had, in all likelihood, his final start of his baseball career yesterday. I am over the moon that we could give him a proper send-off. Winning the game. Giving him a proper send-off in the situation that the Royals were in, I should say. Because would you have liked to have made the playoffs this year? For sure. Was that in the cards past the All-Star break? So they gave him the best send-off possible. And I appreciate that because, it's tough to say where this Royals team will be ending up come next year. Because next year you got some decisions to make. One of those decisions is what you're going to do at the catcher position. Because, I hate to say it, folks, there's a possibility that Salvador Perez is gone after this year. There's a strong possibility. And, as much love as he gets in this Kansas City area, love doesn't pay the bills. And it's professional sports. Bottom line is money. I've said that before. I'll say it again. I don't see Salvador Perez staying with the Kansas City Royals for this year. However, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think this is the era of the new guard and a fresh new start for a manager that has now 1 year of experience under his belt. Was it a bad year this past year? Yes. It was a not ideal year for the Royals. They didn't get 107 losses, which is good. I think I feel like that's the record, but I can't remember for the life of me. I don't actually, I think the record is like 112 losses or something like that. I can't remember for the life of me. I think that's the franchise record, 107. But I could be wrong. I think next year is all about the young guys. Bobby Wood Jr., MJ Melendez, Vinny Pasquantino is going to be back. And and just Drew Waters and a whole host of young talent because the Royals have a ton of it right now. And they have a ton of it that's untapped. And that's the whole reason they brought in a new scouting director, especially from a team as prestigious as the Braves. Uh, that's the whole reason they did that because they realized what kind of young talent they have. And they're looking to build it. And they're looking to insert it into this major league team so that they can be a competitor. And in a very weak AL Central, I might add. Like this AL Central is not good. I don't see any AL Central team making it past the divisional. Yeah, I'll say that right now. I don't see any AL team that somehow sneaks its way into the playoff. Any AL Central team that sneaks its way into the playoffs. Because the best team are the Twins, who are above average and are inconsistent. And then next is the Guardians, which, sorry, Sarah, they're mediocre. And then you got the White Sox, who, if you've been keeping up with the White Sox, you know how mad their fan base is. Because they have one of the highest bankrolls in the entire MLB and still went under 500. And still couldn't get out of the AL Central. That's bad. It's bad. Um, but yeah, that's just what the Royals have to do is they have to continue building around their young talent and recognize that the olden days are over. I mean, it's time for the new talent to come up and be this team, and be the leaders of this team because the time for rebuild is almost over. I think this is yet another rebuilding year, and I think it's the last rebuilding year that the Royals fan base is willing to put up with. If they don't see improvement, there's going to be some pretty bad problems for this Royals for this for this Royals team. And you know, I, I I I want them to improve because I don't want John Sherman to use an ailing Royals team as leverage to sell this team. I don't. Because if that's the case, yeah, and I'm not saying that John Sherman wants to sell the team. I'm not saying that John Sherman will sell the team or will try to, whether or not he gets his way come the April vote for the new stadiums. That's not what I'm saying. I think, he's a bit more patient than that. I think he does have love for the Royals. He's just kind of incompetent at owning a baseball team. There's a lot that goes into it. Me personally, I would have a tough time myself. But I feel like I could do a better job than John Sherman. All right. But at any rate, uh, you can only hope that it could only go up from here for the Royals. And I think it will. I think the Royals are going to have a lot of young talent come in and make a big difference by next year. Um, will it still be probably an under 500 year? More than likely. But it's potential that it could, this Royals team could shock people next year. That remains to be seen. We won't know until this coming April. So, well, a little bit after this coming April. But yeah, just Royals had their final game of the season. Sent Zach Greinke out on a high note, which that man has been through some suffering with this organization, so good on them. I hope he's Cooperstown bound. I believe he should be because he's just one heck of a pitcher. So my hats off to you, Zach. Good luck in retirement. I hope all bodes well for you. You were definitely one of my favorite Royals. So okay, moving on to the Chiefs. The Chiefs. Um, what was that last night? Got out to 17-0 lead, and I was in the middle of writing that paper. Kept looking over, and I was just like, okay, yeah, maybe I don't need to pay too much attention. And then the second quarter happened, and I, luckily enough, got my paper finished by halftime, which was nice. But the halftime score wasn't so nice. I thought it would be a little bit less than it was, but we move on. I think Patrick Mahomes said earlier, you got to win the gimmies, but you can win pretty or something like that. But you also have to win ugly if you're going to make Super Bowls. 100% agree. You know, you're going to have bad games. It's going to happen. It's professional sports. It's incredibly unpredictable. Um, but one aspect of last night's game really stuck in the craw of both fan bases, and that's the refereeing. Holy cow, it was bad last night on both ends. Let's be completely honest with ourselves here. There were some holding calls that were missed by the Chiefs. Well, by the referees that should have gone against the Chiefs, is what I meant. Sauce Gardner, that hold was kind of Yeah, it's ticky tack, I'd say, and the fact that he threw the flag so late was just bad optics. It made it worse. Um, yeah, Sauce did grab the nameplate of MBS and kind of tugged on it a little bit, immediately let go. But that is still technically contact after 5 yards. So you could call a holding penalty there. Most referees aren't, to be honest, but you could, and you chose to, and it benefited us. But there were a lot of calls that went the Jets' way as well. Jawan Taylor committed the face mask outside the end zone. That's not a safety. He committed the face mask outside of the end zone. That's half the distance per goal. The ball's going to be on like the half-inch line. It's not a safety. In the grand scheme of things, there were penalties that were a little bit more significant. I'm thinking about the Brees Hall face mask that turned into a horse collar somehow when the hand was here. That's not a horse collar. This is. You can put your hands anywhere up here, as long as it's not up here or up here. So, just at least it was consistent. But yeah, it's just the NFL has seemingly had some bad hires when it comes to refereeing. And I think what it boils down to is kind of the culture surrounding refereeing right now. I don't know if I've mentioned it before on past podcasts, but I wanted to be a referee for a long time, and was for intramural sports and for middle school sports. But eventually, it just I couldn't take it anymore. And I left refereeing because I saw, I guess you could say, writing on the wall. When it came to the culture surrounding refereeing, the culture surrounding refereeing doesn't really have a whole lot to do with the referees themselves, but rather those that choose to go after the referees. I try and go at, and maybe this is because I'm a former referee, but I try to get to provide constructive criticism to referees at any level. And I'm not Dean Blandino or anybody like that, but or Ed Hockley, etc. Like decorated officials. I'm not that, but at the same time, it's it's a job that requires thick skin and a lot of confidence. A lot of the people that are, taking shots at the referees don't have that confidence, don't have that know-how, and frankly speaking, have never been there before. I will tell you right now, even those intramural games and those middle school games, there was a ton of pressure to do well because you're gonna get screamed at, you're gonna get verbally abused, you're gonna get, you know, you may even get physically abused in some cases. And it all starts with the culture surrounding refereeing in the United States today. And in some parts of the world too. Honestly, it's a problem in the United States mainly. And it's a matter of you have to understand that these referees are humans too. And you have to understand that do we really think the NFL is rigged? Do we really think the NFL is rigged? Because there's been a lot of stuff that's happened in the NFL that script writers couldn't write, to be honest. There's a lot of stuff that looks scripted. I'll agree with that. But there's a lot of stuff that just straight up can't. That just doesn't happen. That people can't predict. But going into continuing on with the referee talk and speaking of Jawan Taylor from earlier, I asked a burning question to you all. Does Jawan Taylor deserve the criticism? And let's just go to your answers real quick. Okay. So on social media, I asked you guys, is the Jawan Taylor situation justified? Um, and 100% of you voted no, he's being singled out. The NFL should relax. I agree. I think he's still got a penalty problem, but I do agree that when it came to that situation in particular, where he was, lining up off the ball and whatever, basically every tackle in the NFL does that at one point or another. And I think it's a silly rule, to be frank. It doesn't provide any advantage if you're going up against an NFL level edge. It doesn't. And, you know, it is all about timing. Because if Jawan Taylor gets off early, then they're gonna call that. But I don't know. But it's not justified. I still think he's got some penalty issues that he needs to work on and some fundamentals that he needs to work on. But I mean, that face mask was blatant. To be honest, I mean, he can't be reaching up here when blocking. He's got to keep his hands inside. as you're taught to do as an offensive lineman. You have to keep your hands inside. But I mean, it is what it is. It's at this point it's water under the bridge because more people are talking about how incompetent the referees are rather than Jawan Taylor. Um, so at this point, it's kind of water under the bridge. That shows you how fast NFL news moves and how the court of public opinion moves. So, um, moving on to more Chiefs stuff. Patrick Mahomes did not look like himself this past week. He didn't. Um, he wasn't setting and throwing right. Deep balls where he had to put in like what looked like maximum effort. Only went like 45 yards, and he threw basically 3 picks. It wasn't a good game for him. Um, and you can talk all you want about how the referees. There's no excuses for Patrick Mahomes. Something is wrong in that regard, and something needs to be fixed pretty immediate. Um, he's still on pace to throw for over 4,500 yards. He's still on pace to throw for, I think, like 40 touchdowns. So it's fine right now as long as you nip it in the bud. But it's concerning. It is because he didn't look fully healthy, and that's my biggest concern. Is okay, is his ankle fully healed? Is he having problems with his shoulders, throwing shoulder? Like what's going on here? But we will find out. Looking ahead, they got, I believe, the Vikings next. That or the Broncos. I can't be sure. Let me go check right quick. Um, Chiefs. Oh, they're there. Sorry. Um, yeah, they got the Vikings next, and then the Broncos after that. So pretty. The Vikings might be tough. They've been having a really frustrating season so far. They definitely need to figure it out. Um, and they'll be at home, so the Chiefs will be on the road playing the Vikings, and that's it. That's a loud stadium. It can get loud. Um, and the Vikings will be looking for blood. So I think that game's going to be closer than a lot of people think. Yeah, the Vikings are 1-3. Yeah, they haven't looked spectacular in their past couple of games. I think they figure it out though. I think this is probably the game that they will do it to. I'm not saying the Chiefs won't win, but they'll have a tough day on their hands. And need to play better than what they did this past week. The Broncos, I'm not entirely worried about that one, honestly. I think, I mean, we all saw how the Broncos have been doing. Um, you know, congrats on their first win against an even more struggling Bears team that the Chiefs beat by 40. So 30, but garbage time touchdowns. It was 40. And then they have the Chargers, which that will be probably the toughest test of the season until you hit the Dolphins the week after that. So, or 2 weeks after that. So that's kind of what we're looking at in regard to the Chiefs. Let's move on to the minor stuff, and then we will wrap up here. Okay. So the minor stuff that I kind of just want to rapid fire. Arterio Morris, the now former Kansas guard, um, has been officially arrested on charges of rape and aggravated sexual assault. So he is officially off the team. He is no longer suspended. He is released from his scholarship, and he is probably going to spend quite a bit of time in prison. Um, oh, excuse me. Um, just a tough look overall. It's just a bad situation. And I wish it had gone better. I wish that he would have made the most of his second chance because he had a ton of talent. Um, but unfortunately, it just wasn't to be. He couldn't stay out of trouble. So goodbye, good riddance. And that's basically what KU has to do at this point is just say goodbye and good riddance. Um, in lighter-hearted news, the Blues went 2-0 over the weekend. They beat gosh, beat Metropolis, the team from Minneapolis, Minnesota. They beat them 43-27. Division Two also got the win over Omaha, 43-17. Both just crackers of games. And the Blues looked great, honestly. The flow of the game looked awesome. They really found their groove. They looked fit. Um, and overall, just great performances from especially the Ford pack. That Ford pack has been leaps and bounds better than what they were last year. And I think that goes a lot of credit goes to Ford's coach, Jamie Devers, really getting those guys into good physical shape. So, congrats to them. Wish I could have been out there. Unfortunately, I am suffering from a strained hamstring right now. Um, Doc said about a 2 week recovery time. So, hopefully, I'll be out there not this coming week, but the next week. So, um, current Kansas City Current officially eliminated from playoff contention. Um, It's unfortunate, especially after the dream season last year. That kind of came out with a dud this year. But is what it is. Again, it happens. It's professional sports. Looking ahead to next year, they should have a team with a lot more chemistry, a lot better defense, and there were some bright spots this year. So build off those bright spots and recover in time to have a great season in your new stadium. So, and then finally, Sporting Kansas City got stomped by St. Louis. Um, they have two more games to claim that final playoff spot, the final wild card spot. They face, I believe, Minnesota and I think Houston. No, not Houston. Um, let's have a check real quick. Let's have a check real quick. Okay, so there was Kansas City, but just click on that. They play Salt Lake in Minnesota. Um, Salt Lake, if you don't know already, is where are they? Yeah. So you go from playing the first place team in the conference to the second place team in the conference. Real Salt Lake is the second place team, and they look really, really good. So that's going to be a tough one. And then you play Minnesota, who is one rank below you, who is also going to be playing for their playoff lives. Um, that St. Louis game was a must win. In my opinion, it was. I knew it was going to be a tough game. I knew St. Louis was going to be out for blood because of the result that they had against Sporting last time, and they showed up and delivered. So these next two games are must wins, and they're going to be really, really, really tough. If Peter Vermees can will this squad past these next two games, I think that they can have some good momentum going into playoffs. But um, honestly, I don't know if they'll need help or not. If they win these next two games, I don't think they will. I think they do secure one of those wild card spots. But if they don't, and they either draw or lose one or both, they're going to need a lot of help. And that means Dallas is going to have to lose, and those teams that are just above them are going to have to lose, and Minnesota is probably going to have to lose one of their next two as well. So we're really getting down into the fighting for your playoff lives territory with Sporting. So, but we knew that. We all knew that. So, that's our show. So, thank you for joining me, and thank you for all that you do. I really do appreciate it. We're coming up on a year and 6 months for doing this. So thank you very much for sticking with me. Um, we may have actually already hit it because it started in March. Yeah, we hit it. Yeah, we're past a year and 6 months of doing this. Thanks for sticking with me, guys. Much appreciated. Thank you for your viewership, your readership, your chip. And, I'm truly blessed to have a platform where I can just rant about Kansas City sports all day and have even just a few people listen to me. So thank you very much for joining me this last sports. Thanks for joining me. This has been Alex Blackburn. For the Burn KC signing off. Have a great night. Thank you. God bless.